how to network and get from high value customer to high value customer. Okay, so using that time where he's actually performing, even though it's HVAC work, all right, whoever called in that work order and said, "Hey, come in here, come to this hospital medical facility and fix this HVAC." Well, he's in a really good position because when he changes his business name to, what's your name of your business, Gregory?
Revival Government Solutions.
Yeah, Revival Government Solutions. Okay, so if you look at that name, Revival Government Solutions, that is not it's not Revival HVAC or Revival Heating and Cooling. Okay, Revival, a government solution, that is pretty much the scope is wide open. All right, they're not just going to scope you into, HVAC, heating and cooling or whatnot. Revival Government Solutions means, hey, you're a government solution provider. So when he's there talking to the head shed about, hey, here's what happened to this HVAC. Here's what I did to it. Invoice will be in the air as soon as I, get to my computer, yada yada. He's gonna say, hey, it's a pleasure working for you. I love doing business with you guys, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything else because we do so much more than just HVAC. That's you're barely scratching the surface. If you need a quote for anything, even if it's in the idea phase, it all starts with a quote for your market research. So please don't hesitate to reach out because if I can't do it, I know the people who can, the best people in the area. Other than that, everything's fixed. Have a great rest of your week. And you always follow up an email. Another thing you could say is hey, while I was doing work here, fixing this HVAC, I noticed your fire suppression system starting to, kind of come apart, kind of unbolt from the ceiling. Do you have the point of contact that I could reach out to just to let them know that hey, you might need some updates to your suppression system because fire suppression is expensive. All right, HVAC's expensive. It's all really expensive. It's expensive. It all falls under facilities maintenance. So not that you have to be stuck on DLA TLS, but under DLA TLS, overarching contract, there's FES, SOE, and then there's MRO, maintenance and operations. So he's networking and developing business with the person he's in front of with the government, but then he's also saying, "Hey, I found another problem. Who's the point of contact I would be reaching out to for this fire suppression system?" Just to at least give you a quote because this thing's coming apart and it's going to be a problem in the future. All right, you don't have to limit it to fire suppression. It could be anything that you see in that facility, no matter what government customer you're in front of. Who's the point of contact who you would reach out to fix this? All right. And that's just an example of networking from one high value individual to another. Okay. Because they each have different sections, they each have different lanes they're responsible for, and they're all in charge of money. So even if you can get to their right hand man, who's probably the person who's actually putting it to get everything together anyway and actually submitting it to go to a contract, it's not usually the main director. They usually have an assistant or a deputy, underneath them, and that's the person who does everything, who actually does the thing. So a lot of the times, those are the people you want to get to, and that could be for, hey, this magnetic gate, the badge reader's not working or it's jiggling and it's loose and it's falling off. Man, it looks like you're going to need a new one. Who's head of your security? Would you mind giving me that point of contact, man? I just want to let them know that hey, there's something new. This is pretty old. There's already the new hotness is already out, and I just wanted to give him a quote and let him know because it's you want to be proactive. You don't want to just let things fall apart and be reactive. You want to be proactive, especially something like security, because that's literally their only job is one to make sure everyone's badges, everyone work, their cat cards work, their access control badges. All right, and then to make sure everyone's security clearances are good, to make sure that everyone's read on to whatever, if you're TSCI, then you have to have a certain read on. That's within their scope, but also, the actual physical security of the facility, the closed circuit televisions, the magnetic door locks, the automatic gates, the server that runs and records all that stuff. That stuff is crazy expensive. It's crazy expensive, but so you could be there for HVAC, you could be there to give a quote for HVAC, all right, but you're already networking to other people in other sections and other divisions, that that are going to have these needs. And you're going to be one of the only people even in front of them, period, because there's very few people who get in front of, you know, GS, government civilian. It's usually going to be GS, government civilian people who oversee that because they stay there for 20 years. They have continuity, whereas DOD soldiers, you're PCSing every 3 years. Everyone's always changing out constantly. So government civilians or GS employees, much of the time, they're there for years, and a lot of the times, those are the people you want to be networking with and making sure that they know who you are, seeing your shirt, seeing your capability statement, definitely getting their email. But the point is, there's very few people who, are in charge of dictating where money goes and what gets bought with their little pool of money. So through those examples, you can see how you can network through something or someone who's totally unrelated, right? You could still network, through all these people down here. You could still network your way all the way back up to the few top players. All right. So that's literally developing business. And by bringing something to their attention that wasn't even a requirement, like a fire suppression system that's leaking or faulty, like you just developed an opportunity out of nothing. All right. Because it wasn't even on their radar yet. Just an example of how I would want you guys to think when you're in front of the government, period. Whether that be a soldier or a GS employee, even contractors have a lot of responsibility. They don't have authority to spend money on behalf of the government most of the time, but still they might have the authority to, they might be contracted to maintain the facility or something like that. So then they would be the ones responsible for that fire suppression system or for handling all these work orders. From what I've seen, like the most well-maintained facilities are are ran by a contract. Like their maintenance personnel are on contract, and it's a performance-based contract, meaning, hey, when a problem or a work order is identified, you respond within 24 hours. It's all performance-based, and you can tell a GS or government ran facility from a contractor ran facility because one looks a lot nicer than the other. One's a lot more maintained than the other because a lot of GS employees, already did 20 years in the Army. Now they're just kind of doing their 20 years in the government. Not to say that this isn't all the time, because some GS workers are awesome, but much of the times when it comes to facility maintenance, landscaping, sprinkler irrigation, just trimming your bushes, overall cleanliness and maintenance, contracted facilities that are maintained by contracted personnel tend to be better looking because that's their only focus in life is that's their only job. Plus, it's performance based. So that's just something to keep in mind. But now that we got some people in here, I want to know what are some of your questions? What questions do you have from this course so I can start writing these down and making more videos, adding to this course and making it better and better and better. All right, I just went over business development, developing opportunity out of nothing. There's so many examples of how to do that, but I just want you to start thinking in that in that mindset is you're always scanning, you're always looking for opportunities. If something's broken or missing or old or outdated, even if it's perfectly fine, if that fire suppression system or access control is perfectly fine, hey, do you have the point of contact for your access control? Whatever, because you still just want that point of contact because those are all supplies and they're all super expensive. All right. That's just how I want you to think. There's something else I was going to talk about. Oh, yeah, getting sucked into TLS or Unison. Okay. So don't get sucked into just TLS or Unison Marketplace. All right. The reason I go over those is those are definitely the path of least resistance. So most DOD, most likely government, they're going to know about those two contract vehicles because that's just the most pain-free way to buy something. But sometimes they don't. So if you're on an Air Force base, right? Air Force has more squared away contracting personnel that are soldiers that they kind of hold their hand more if they need something at the lowest level. It's not like in the Army where it's just, well, if you can figure out a way to get it, then get it. All right. So a lot of times they know if they go with DLA, they're going to pay. They know it's really expensive. So they might want to do business directly with you, right? Direct contract, not do Unison, not do DLA TLS. And that's perfectly fine because as long as you're putting it into a kit custom part number, breaking down everything they want underneath it, you always want to show in the quote everything they're getting, brand name, right? It doesn't matter because all they're going to do is post whatever you have highlighted, all right, in your quote. So it's Air Force. If they want to do business direct with you, don't get stuck in just DLA, TLS, or Unison Marketplace. Say, hey man, this just works for my Army customers. This is what they found the easiest, simplest way. I know it costs, and it's overwhelmingly best value to the government to contract directly with me, and I absolutely prefer that. Everybody wins. So yes, I'm happy to do so. Tell me what you need from me. All right. And then they can just direct award you stuff. You know what I mean? So don't just get stuck in those two contract vehicles or two ways to purchase because, especially Air Force, they're more squared away and it makes more sense to just directly contract with you. As long as it's in a kit and a custom part number, nothing really matters. It really doesn't matter if it comes out on SAM.gov because it's the same thing. Everybody and their brother can see it, but how would you know? What that is. It could be a brand new fire suppression system from Johnston Controls or whoever makes those things, and you can call it just, expeditionary, suppression, fire package configuration 111, manufacturer you, but really it's a Johnston Controls, fire suppression system that even if you didn't quote it, you had to call Johnston to come out and quote it. They put everything together for that building. That still kind of is a custom package, even though the components are all manufactured and they're all the same. Every building's different. So every package that they come out and quote is going to be different. It's going to be totally different. So that is a different product. And so if they're coming out, if you're the one going in and getting the business, calling Johnson Controls in, even though they have massive contracts with the government, well, whatever, they don't have that opportunity. So you're just letting them know, hey man, if you could take care of these people, these are good dudes. I like these customers. Pass me the quote, and I will get it closed through an already existing contract, which they probably, I'm sure, already know about TLS. But still, they're going to be like, hey, if you went in and developed it, then it's yours. They're not going to say something or go run to ADS or anything like that because it's your customer that they obviously didn't get wind of that opportunity. So it's yours. And usually people are pretty good about that. But that is all I had. So now I'd like to go into questions from you guys. What is it you want to know? But that maybe the course didn't cover. You want to know more about in detail. I'm wide open.
Hey Ryan,
Yeah. Astro, what's up, brother?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Driving right now, but as I'm listening to you, I wanted to see if you can elaborate a little bit more on how we as contractors can get on installations. I know that in the course it kind of emphasized industry days and also sending out the email templates, but if you can just go over it a bit for all of us.
So definitely. All right. On SAM.gov and sometimes say Fort Benning, Georgia, right? I can go on the Fort Benning, Georgia website. They always have an official website for every installation, and they usually have a section for doing business or contracting. I would click on that, and then that would take you to the contracting section, which in the Army it's called the MIC, Military Installation Contracting Command. On Air Force, they're usually called contracting squadrons, whatever. But they list dates for industry days, and they usually list their small business point of contact. Either or, you know, those are important because that's kind of how they get the news out. And a lot of times they'll put it out on SAM.gov saying, hey, this is an industry day calling all contractors, within the Fort Benning area. This is your day to come on, ask us questions. They give you contract forecast list for everything that's teed up coming over the next, sometimes 5 years. All right. And then you take those contract forecast lists, those are opportunities, forecasted opportunities, and then you take those forecasted opportunities and you go to larger businesses and you develop business. Okay, especially if they are large, well, they don't have access to small business opportunities.
And I
You
got the
know,
Starbucks cheesecake and they're
this could
ready to
be this could be totally unrelated to supplies. It doesn't matter because a big part of your business is just visibility, right? People have to know you exist and that you do work with DOD. So that's one way of doing it is directly through their websites or reaching out to their small business contact because all that small business person is just a contract officer and they're just assigned that extra duty to be like the small business guy, and then they kind of determine what goes, hey, what's set aside for small business and what isn't. They have a say in the process when they do their staffing and approval, when a contracting package actually gets to the contracting office, well, they have their own JAG and legal that reviews the requirement, and then they have a small business person. So they are a centralized location that see everything for that installation. So pinging those people and finding out those industry days, getting on site and getting your name out there and letting them know, hey, I'm in right in your backyard. There's a lot I can provide. I have deals with several all kinds of manufacturers, and plus I know the best installers and contractors locally. So, and I'm talking even for services, right? Because even for services, you're just getting a quote from whoever's doing the service, and then you're putting profit on it, and then you're going to submit it. The point is, you're the one getting the work and getting the access to the customer. All right. So I definitely don't want you to like turn down services because the more you're in front of customers providing them supplies and complex equipment installations, well, eventually some of those, like a fire suppression system, a total rip out and reinstallation, that probably should be a service anyway, but you could swing that as a supply, unquestionably. But still, if they still want to drop it in your lap because you're one of the only people in front of them, that's probably going to happen. Just being there, opportunities get dropped in your lap, and they'll ask you, "Hey, do you do this? Do you do that? Do you know anybody who does this?" Well, they're kind of giving you a hint, like, "Hey, man, just give me a quote, man, and they're dropping it in your lap." But that's one way to get onto installations, right? So if you're not service disabled or retired, you have to do that, and you have to go to site visits. And even any construction site visits, the majority, I'd say the most reoccurring way to get onto an installation is to go to construction site visits, okay? And the construction site visits I went to as a prime, like a lot of the people there, it could look crowded, like there's 20 dudes there. But in reality, there's really only like three other primes I'm competing against, and everybody else is like a manufacturer representative. So they're not even there to to bid on that project. They're there to find the primes to market to them to get their points of contact and say, hey man, we sell all the electrical boxes and conduit for this project. Just so you know, we'll cut you a very good deal so that your material cost is low, and we know really good electricians in this area. They're kind of a one-stop shop. So and that they're going after the GCs. They have no intent. They did not intend on bidding that project directly at all. They're going after subcontracted work, right? And that's something I definitely advise people do. All right. You don't have to be a general contractor or do construction to go there and make friends. Because again, visibility, people need to see your shirt, or your flyer or whatever. You're getting your government point of contact, like the contract officer, the engineer that's there. All right. But then you're also networking with prime so that when that prime does win that general construction contract, yeah, they build all this stuff, but they don't do roll up doors, epoxy floors, and storage solutions. Especially if it's like wraparound services, a construction project that's not just the bare bones facility. They contracted it right, and they're like, no, we want it outfitted. We want it outfitted with already ready to go warehouse logistics hub. We want the rolling floors. We want the pallet racks. We want the forklifts. They need to be electric. You need to put charging stations here, 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 here. That's where a GC is gonna farm that out. They're gonna farm that out to somebody. All right. Instead of going to multiple individual manufacturers for every little piece and component, it's a lot of times it's just easier to, especially if you're showing up saying like, "Hey man, I do, supplies and complex equipment installations. Like this is what I do." If you're there doing that, then that's what you do. All right. Then it's better just to go to you to get all that quoted, and you run all those little things down, all those pieces. All right. You run them all down. So going to construction site visits, which those aren't the only site visits, but those are the most frequently occurring and reoccurring. Those are just good places to know or good places to go because you got to show up. You got to show up and you need visibility. Any sign-in roster you get, like you're gonna sign in to most site visits. All right. And usually on a construction project, everybody who signed their name, business, email address. All right, they snap a picture of it and they post it on SAM.gov. Sometimes they don't though. But anytime, right when you sign that thing, but you be one of the last people to sign it, and then snap a picture of it with your phone. And then you develop business with all those primes, and you let them know what you do. And so that way you have other people going after opportunities, even if they are construction or services, it doesn't matter. You can still wiggle your way in there. All right. Even if it's just these supplies like roll up doors or storage or whatever, that stuff's crazy expensive. So it's not like it's crumbs by any means. It's just, does that GC have the personnel to go run down every single component? Or if you run into a guy who obviously made it onto the installation, he speaks the language, he was at the site visit, and he's offering me all these little things that I really don't want to run down myself. So it's just easy to just, hey, farm this out to this guy. And general contractors do that, to electrical. They do it to HVAC. They do it to, the concrete guys. It's not like all those guys are on their payroll as a W-2. They subcontract most of these things out. They might have a core business of like framers and maybe some electrical that they could self-perform, but a lot of that stuff is just subcontracted out to different businesses. So you can definitely inject yourself that way. And what I would do, I mean, if I'm on site, I got a 1 day pass for this site visit. Well, I'm gonna roll around. When that site visit's over, man, I'm rolling around, and I'm gonna go knock on doors and make friends, go hit up range control, go hit up DPW. That's like Department of Public Works. A lot of installations have their own little app that'll help you navigate. You just type in where you want to go, and then like it'll give you the building number and navigate you there like Google Maps. But that's another really good way to get onto an installation is site visits. So site visits and industry days, networking with primes who primarily do business on installations. Well, that gives you a need to know. That gives you a need because you're performing as a subcontractor on this contract. So getting onto an installation it's not that difficult. Some are a lot more difficult than others because if they have like submarines there, right? Those are really secret. Anything submaritime, that place is going to be locked down. A lot of these Air Force bases, sometimes they joint, especially if they're joint, but Air Force bases, they got a lot of crazy stuff for aircraft. So the security is a little bit higher. All right. But there's still people coming on and off that installation all day, every day who are not in the military and never were. So you got to keep that in mind. Pizza delivery guy, Chinese food delivery guy, like their taxis, they all get onto installations, for business, for commerce, because nothing would run if it didn't. So those are the three primary methods. If you don't have post access because you're not a disabled vet or a retiree, some people I'm coaching and doing business with now, they're already contractors on that site, all right, working for another large prime, and then they're using that access, contractor access, to like kind of break off and go do their own thing. Um, that's you have to be creative, but then again, it's not that difficult if you're persistent and you start looking for people who have the access or can give you the access or the site visits, the opportunities to get on, they start popping up into your field of view, when you actually start looking for them, especially on the installations that are, within, a 2 hour radius of you identify all those, and then you start digging for industry days. So that's what I would be doing, Astro, if I didn't have actual, installation access. But yeah. So let's see here. Alonzo A. Let's go, man. What's up, Alonzo?
Hey,
And
what's going
thanks for
on, man?
that, Ron.
Yeah, man. Absolutely, Astro.
Yeah, how's it going? So I've been seeing emails about this, but I was a little bit confused. So now you say you've already created some classes?
Yeah, there's a whole course, Alonzo, for
Oh, sh
yeah. Yeah,
no, no,
man.
no, I'm sorry. No, no, I know there was a module from before. Is there a new course you're saying? Or is you talking about the module from before?
Oh no, yeah, I think there's like 8 modules or 7 modules
Right,
to this
right.
course, but like what I'm doing now is I'm answering all these questions and I'm recording them. And then I'm gonna go back, make new videos, and I'm gonna add everything you're asking me to the course until the point we just don't have any questions that aren't answered in the course. Because then I don't gotta really answer questions. I could just say, oh, it's in module 7, video 6. When right now there's probably only like 4 videos in there. But yeah, that's the plan, Alonzo. But
Okay,
everything there
cool.
is what you see is what you get. So the cohorts are definitely gonna have a lot of value now because anything that's missing or that wasn't included, we're going to answer it here and I'm going to annotate it and we're going to go back and add it till we got a complete product. But yeah, man.
Okay. No, sounds good, man. Solid. I'm an Air Force veteran, so thank you.
Good stuff, man. Awesome, dude. Good stuff, Alonzo. All right. Kevin, let's go, man. I unmuted you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wanted you to elaborate. You said something in regards to the Air Force um when you're doing the contracting business, like it it being something as opposed to like the Army. I couldn't really hear you because the signal was
Oh,
breaking up or
okay.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So what I was talking about with the Air Force, all right, when it comes to all these customers, you're gonna find some services are a lot more loose than others. So I've coached people who they'd never even been in the military before ever, and they still can go to an army base and they can get 10-day contractor passes. They just give insurance license and they're like, yeah, I'm going to see the logistics cell at this building number or whatever. Or the guy even he gave him the answer. He's like, hey man, are you here to see the logistics guys over at building whatever? He's like, yes, I am. And then boom, he goes back every 10 days and he gets this damn 10-day pass, and that was like Fort Polk, Louisiana, right? Because it's just loose. But then in the Air Force, the stuff's a lot tighter, okay? Because especially if they have like some pretty heavy shit or pretty secret stuff, then yeah, obviously you're gonna have to have an escort if you don't have a direct need to know. But the other thing I was talking about, that's just installation access, is Air Force is a little bit more squared away in their contracting process, right? Where the Army, it's not. I don't want to say it's not as organized, right? If you need something, you can find a way to get it. If you don't want to go through your contracting office, which most people don't, well, they're like, hey, if you don't like our process, you're free to go wherever you want. If you can get it a better way, it's more loose. Whereas the Air Force, their contracting officers, which a lot of them are soldiers, they're airmen. They will hold the customer. They'll go down to a squadron and hold their hand. All they have to do is say like, hey, I have a quote. I want this bought. Can you make it contract? And then they'll actually do it. They'll actually do it and say, "Yeah, man, I got you. I'll take care of everything." It's kind of what I expected in the Army. I figured you just get a quote, you go give it to them, and they just make it a contract because it's over the GPC amount, right? But it's not like that. They're like, "No, man, it doesn't work like that at all." Um, Whereas in the Air Force, they're a little bit more accommodating, and the contract officers are more involved in those processes. So some people in the Air Force, the contract officers specifically, they don't want to go through DLA because they're like, well, hell, we gotta pay you, but then we gotta pay a prime on top of that, adding 12%, and then we gotta pay DLA 5.4% to use their contract. So that's a lot of money. Whereas I could just contract directly with you. I could just do it directly to you, which makes sense. It's what the Army should do, right? But they don't hold your hand like that in the Army. And I think there's a lot fewer contract officers in the Army, man, because they were all stressed out, kind of shoved in cubicles, and everybody and their brother is just dumping stuff on them. As soon as they buy something, boom, there's something else there, and they're doing multiple things at once for multiple people. And so I think that's kind of why they're like, hey, man, if you can get it somewhere else and you need it faster, then hey, feel free. You're good luck because it's less work for them, right? Whereas the Air Force, they're a little bit more involved and they kind of baby the customer and they know that, yeah, it's an already existing contract. DLA is an already existing contract, but I can just contract directly with you. And then another big point was, yeah, I know you're here to learn about supplies and with delivery, setup, installation, whatever incidental services, but even if you're in front of the government, it's really likely that they'll drop opportunities in your lap because you're one of the few people there. And if it's written as a service, that's okay. You don't turn it down because you're doing the same thing. You're going and you're gonna get the subcontractors who do that, and you're gonna bring them the quote. You're just the one there in front of them, so it's a lot more easy to just deal with you, or at least ask you, hey man, I know you're doing this, but do you also do this? And then they can work with you directly. And I think that's more common in the Air Force, right? Which is how it should be for all the services. They all should be like that. They should be like, here, man, let's do business directly, at the lowest level, because that saves a ton of money. Because when you go with DLA, it adds like 25% cost of whatever it is you're buying. The markups are crazy, but for me, that was like a convenience fee because that's the easiest, fastest way to get it done. But yeah, Air Force, they'll do more direct work with you. And a lot
Um,
of opportunities will show up just by being there, just by existing there, your presence and your visibility. There's just not a lot of people getting in front of them, period. It's not like they have a ton of options because otherwise I got to go find you on Google, meet them at the gate, bring them on. You know what I mean? You're kind of, if it's hot outside, it's better just to call somebody who has installation access and say, "Hey man, can you come to this building number and take a look at this?" And they don't gotta go meet you or escort you or get you on. Like you could just go meet them at that building number because you're a service disabled veteran, so you have access. That saves a lot of time. It's a lot of convenience, especially if it's hot outside or it's freezing cold, whatever. But yeah, that's what I was talking about, man.
Hey, Ryan, I can add some context to
Okay,
that, man.
got it.
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
Let's go,
Oh, no,
Alonzo.
sir, I got it.
All right, brother.
yeah. Let
Thanks,
me
Kevin.
jump in. Let me make my voice a little bit deeper, man, because I thought I had a deep voice until I heard Kevin.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
Got the base.
so so I was an acquisitions guy in the Air Force, right? And
Hmm.
so I worked closely with contracting officers and all of these people you guys are talking about.
Uh-huh.
I spoke to some Army colleagues, and they said, "Hey, you can't even get into this field until late in your career."
Yeah.
So in the Air Force, as a newly commissioned officer, I can go in as a butter bar and start learning about acquisitions and contracting and everything else. Whereas when I saw my Army colleagues, you couldn't do that until you were a major. Now that's what they told me years ago. I don't know if that has changed.
It's still
So
the
when I
same,
want,
Alonzo. It's still the same because I
when
know
when,
as you had to be a senior E6 because you could reclassify to a 51 Charlie, but you had to be senior E6 squad leader time rated, to actually transition over to the contracts and acquisitions. And by the time you're at that point, the Army's kind of crushed your soul, so you're kind of over it. It's not like you're chipper, ready to go and just save America. So yeah, I mean that's
and,
good to know
and
because if you're fresh out, man, doing acquisitions like right off the bat, I mean I think that's better because it definitely needs to be its own job, not something that you just reclass to because you're already too broke down. You hate what you're doing, because you'll carry that
so so
energy
for
over to acquisitions.
So for us, it was I mean, a large number of people work in this field. I don't know how it is for the Army, but a large number of people work in the field and support this effort. So I did want
Yeah.
to share that just to add some additional context coming from the Air Force
Thank
side.
you. Thank you, Alonzo, because that definitely makes sense and is overwhelmingly in the best value to the government. It's definitely in the government's best interest for sure. So that's one of those things that the Air Force definitely does better is they put acquisition on a pedestal because they know how serious it is. And they have a big budget. Not that the Army doesn't, but it's not as big as the Air Force. But for whatever reason, the Army is like loose. They're like, hey, get it however you can get it, man, because I'm busy. But yeah, man, thank you, Alonzo. All right, guys, what else? What else we got? We still got a lot of time.
am I
Any,
am I unmuted by chance?
what's that, Gregory? Let's go, man.
Oh, there we go. Oh, I tried to turn the bass up, but I don't know. My subwoofers are broken, so I'll just leave it up to the
Yeah, mine too.
my amplifier. Something's going on. I don't know. No, I had a question about incidental services.
You're cutting out hard, Gregory. Gregory, you sound like a robot,
Can
brother.
they involve return visit? Is it? Uh-oh. Let
Okay,
me
no,
let me
no,
move.
I hear you now. I hear you now. You're good. Incidental services. What was the question?
Incidental services, can they involve a return visit? So does
Yeah.
everything, once everything's done complete, then it's like, services are complete, done. And the reason I
Yes.
ask is because sometimes you'll get, warranty where, like, say, a Dimplex chiller, they want to send out somebody multiple times a year to make sure the warranty stays active. Or say another random thought is you sell them 100 lawnmowers that they want, and they ask, can incidental services be return visits by any chance?
Absolutely. And that's a really good point. Here, let me write that down. Boom here. Warranty. Boom. Incidental services. All right. Return to customer. Boom. FaceTime. All right. So, yes, absolutely. So, a lot of times, Gregory, if you get a service contract, all right. So, ongoing maintenance for like 5 years for a closed circuit television system, access control. You can buy the supply, have it installed, but then a lot of people, if you're not savvy, which most aren't, you got to do a separate service contract for quarterly maintenance where they come out, make sure everything's running okay, swap out what's old and aging. It's like they'll do a separate 5 year service contract for this supply they bought with one contract, and then you got to do a service contract to maintenance it. Whereas instead of calling it uh, a service, which is quarterly maintenance or whatever, you can call it a warranty. All right, and you can wrap it up into the price of your supply. So price includes, for say a fire suppression system, price includes delivery, setup, installation, 5 year warranty, and then in parentheses, warranty includes quarterly inspections for the next 5 years, right? It's just you're wrapping up those services, you're just attaching them to that supply, all right? And then that's 4 times a year. You can knock on the door of that customer and say, "Hey, man, I'm just here to introduce myself, or just say hello. I was just checking the system. This is a part of your quarterly maintenance plan. If it's all right, man, if you could just walk me through the building, I'm gonna make sure everything's rolling okay. Obviously, you haven't hit me up with any problems, so it's good." But yeah, man, that's what I'm here to do. And then you kind of bullshit, a little bit small talk and say, "Hey, man, is there anything else falling apart around here? Or if you saw something else falling apart, totally unrelated to that fire suppression system, well, then you can bring it up, man, and say, "Hey, I know the best people around here who can do that. Like, obviously, that's going to be a problem in the future. So if you want to be proactive, I'll get you a quote for it." Something like that. It's a reason to get back in front of the customer. You know what I mean? So that's really good. And really, even a warranty, you could say, "Hey, quarterly maintenance inspections." It doesn't mean like if you inspect something and find it and it's broken that they don't have to pay for it. It just means, hey, you're in there checking up on it. You already paid for it and stuff. Stuff fails. That's just how it is. But I will offer to quarterly come in for the next 5 years and tell you what needs to be replaced. Whatever needs to be replaced, I'm gonna hand you that quote, and we could just do $10,000 card swipes to replace whatever it is, because it's just a piece, but it's still an excuse to get in front of that person, and then from once you're in front of that person, you network to other people. All right, it's so that's like a really good point. Is one, it adds value to whatever it is you're selling your kit. Like, hey man, this comes with 5 years of quarterly inspections where we check up on this thing and we keep it rolling for you. So it's not just like you're buying it one and done. Like this is a pretty critical piece, fire suppression or access control or hell, irrigation, whatever. It's pretty critical. So we do the courtesy and everything we sell the government. We go and check up quarterly, and we let you know what needs to be fixed and when. And that's an excuse to get in front of those customers constantly because the important point is to see your face, in your shirt, or at least, hey, everything looks good. Everything's running, as normal. If it's okay, man, I'd like to leave these flyers with you, and you could just, if you could throw them in the trash or pass them out to your peers or whoever you think needs a quote for anything, because I'll be on the installation helping other customers. So anything you need outside of this fire suppression system, it's anything, you got to have a quote. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll be here ASAP because I'll probably be on the installation anyway. Even if you're not on the installation, whatever, you'll get there when they call. So it's really not that big of a deal. But that's a really good point to bring up, Gregory. Is yeah, just throwing in a maintenance, a warranty on it, for inspections for 5 years. Um, whatever, because that's an excuse to get on, man. That's an excuse to get on the installation. Even if it's a tight installation, like, hey, I sold this product. You have the contract number, sold this product to this customer in this building number, and I do quarterly inspections on it to make sure it's running smoothly. That's a need for you to get onto an installation right there. You have business there. Um, and so yeah, that's a good point to bring up, Gregory. I like that because you could do that with damn near anything. I mean, anything. You could pallet racking. I'm making sure the bolts aren't coming out and it's not falling over. Just stop by to make sure everything's okay and you didn't need anything else. Because remember, if you get to that point, you're just one of the few people who even get to that point, and the government always needs things, always. So being there is a big deal. But I'm glad you brought that up, Gregory. That's something I will add into the course. Warranties and those enduring service agreements. And again, that's just for inspection and to let the customer know what part or component is failing, and then that way you bring it to their attention and then they can card swipe it from you. That doesn't mean like you're doing everything for free and buying parts and having to swap it out for 5 years. Like you're just bringing it to their attention. That's a service. It's an incidental service attached to whatever supply it is you sold them. Includes a warranty and quarterly inspections. Like that's just a good thing to add to that line item in parentheses. But yeah, that was great, man. Thank you. All right, what else, guys? What else? Anything at all? Here's something that right off the bat, let me write this down. Boom, here. So penalties here. So here, quotes. Boom. Late fee, penalty. All right. So I talked in the spoke in the course about when you're getting quotes from subcontractors, you want to make sure that those quotes are turnkey. They don't have, say, if they're installing a tower, which you wouldn't call it a tower, you would call it a multi-tiered training observation platform, or you would call it a training aid, right? Because you have to build towers, and that's construction. So if you want to buy a tower, but you don't want it to go through the construction process, you call it a multi-tiered training observation platform, or just a training aid, right? That way you could buy it as a supply with delivery and install. It's installed, it's assembled, it's not built. All right. And that includes the artificial base, which is a slab, because you don't say slab because a slab means construction. All right. But when you get quotes from subcontractors, you want to make sure that they're turnkey. And they don't have in parentheses that, hey, you have to provide all equipment and a porta potty and a dumpster. All right. When you ask for a quote to have this thing installed, you always want to make sure when you get that quote, hey, this is turnkey. You are providing everything that you need. You're providing all equipment. You're providing a dumpster, a porta potty. There's nothing in there in fine print, right? Once I get this awarded, I'm going to find out that, oh, wait, you're supposed to go to United Rentals and rent all this equipment and this dumpster and get this porta potty, right? You didn't like, why would you? Because people do that. They put it in the fine print. And you're kind of like, bro, what the fuck is this, dude? I said turnkey. Like, why is this even in fine print? Like, this is something that you would definitely want me to know, but before I submit this and win this contract. But people do that for whatever reason. And they'll have in the fine print, hey, dude, you need to, yeah, we'll do it. Here's our price, and it looks good, it's cheap. And then you look in fine print. It's like, well, yeah, because you got to go get all the equipment. They just provide the labor. They just have dudes who show up and assemble towers. All right. So you definitely want to ensure that your quotes are turnkey. If you ask for turnkey, that means there is nothing I need to do. I do not need to be on site. I don't need to, which you're going to want to be on site anyway, because that's more FaceTime. But still, there's nothing you need from me. I'm going to give you this purchase order and you're going to go do everything. And I don't even need to exist. All right. Like you want to make sure that's the case. But even if it isn't the case, all right, you can definitely make more money. All right, if they do provide the labor and they have crews of people who install towers or training aids, whatever you'd want to call it. That is what they do. And but in this fine print, it says, hey, we do need a cherry picker and we need a forklift, right? Off-road capable. They'll tell you what they need to install it, and they do need a porta potty and they do need a dumpster. Well, that's actually okay as long as you know that. You need to know that. Don't put it in fine print. It's okay if I need to provide that because you just need to know that. So if their lead time is, hey, it takes us 3 weeks to install this tower, built by panel built, whatever, it takes us 3 weeks. Okay, well, then you're going to go, but you got to provide the equipment. That's okay because you can make a lot more money that way. All you got to do is look at the equipment list, go to United Rentals, if you're in the Southeast, Sunbelt Rentals, whatever. All right, you get a quote. If install time is 3 weeks, you get a quote for 5 weeks. Okay, rental time for all the equipment they want. All right, and that makes up for downtime, that makes up for weather days, that way it makes up for mistakes, because if you don't return that equipment, I mean, it starts to get so expensive that you might as well just bought that equipment. That's why I say if it's 3 weeks, you get a quote for 5 weeks. Some people do double, like no, whatever, 6 weeks. You get a quote for the rental of the equipment for 6 weeks, but 5 weeks is usually fine. Okay, so you get that quote for 5 weeks of equipment rental. Any installation that you're working at, they already have a contractor that does dumpsters and porta potties. So you can call the contracting office. You'll probably see porta potties and dumpsters all around the installation. You just snap a picture of the label on the side and say, hey man, on these dates, for 5 weeks, I'm gonna need a dumpster there and I'm gonna need a porta potty there for my crew. We're installing a tower. All right, and then they just shoot you a quote. You add profit to it for those 5 weeks, and then you add that to your overall quote with your equipment and then the cost of the tower. All right, you add profit to it, and then boom, that's your price. Because then if they say 3 weeks and they're done in 2 weeks, well, then you yank those dumpsters and that porta potties anyway because they paid for 5 weeks, right? So you just made money, like your profit just went, it just went up because you planned, you put more, basically more time on your rentals, which is good. If you get everything hopping and popping, and everything's manufactured and delivered on time, and your site, the guys installing it have no issues. This could be for a raised access floor. It could be for anything. They usually under promise over deliver. So if they say 3 weeks, you rent equipment for 5 weeks, and they're done in 2 weeks. Well, you just got 3 weeks of rental time that the government paid you for. That's now profit, right? Same with the porta potty, same with the dumpster. So it's okay if it's not turnkey. If your quote's not turnkey, it's not the end of the world. It's just like, don't try to hide that in the fine print and then tell me after I'm already awarded that I need to provide all that stuff. That's where, that's happened to me. So that's why I always tell people, make sure it's turnkey. If you ask for turnkey, make sure it is everything all encompassing is included. And if it's not, just make sure, hey, tell me up front. And that way you can go out and get a quote from, United Rentals or Sunbelt Rentals for a cherry picker and a forklift. And then if it's 3 weeks, add five, add profit, and then whatever. It's not a big deal as long as you know about it. Right. But I was telling you there's already a contractor on any installation that for porta potties and dumpsters. So they're already there. They're in place for years. So you just call them and say, I'm a contractor. I'll need a dumpster at this building number for this period of time and a porta potty. All right. And then they just give you a quote, like, all right, man, here it'll be $1,900 or whatever, and that'll include like 3 dumpster haul offs if you fill it up. And as soon as you call them and say, "Hey, I'm done. I don't need it," like they come every time. They came that day, and they came and yanked them up, yanked the dumpster up in the porta potty, and then boom, that's it. They only invoice you for the time that you used. All right, so whatever the government paid you, you subtract the actual time that you used, and the remainder is more profit that you add onto your job. So yeah, and that isn't even one I wrote down to even talk about. So on your quotes, all right, say you're going through DLA TLS. All right, my man Carl down in Miami, this happened to him. He was doing really good. He was hopping and popping really good. All right, but he had this one job. It went through TLS MRO. It was like for 30 roll-up doors. All right, all their storage sheds. It was the Coast Guard. They had these nice, big, long storage concrete buildings. Roll-up doors were rusted off, right? So they needed new roll-up doors. They were sticking. So roll-up doors are expensive. He did 30 of them. So he went to, a local guy who did roll-up doors. That is what they did. He got a quote, put down a prepay. Manufacturer dropped all the roll-up doors off. That local contractor there in Miami installed 30 roll-up doors, ripped off all the old ones, chucked them, put on new nice roll-up doors, galvanized. Anytime you're near the water or the ocean, you need to like always check the type of coating or the type of metal, like because it needs to be galvanized or it needs to be powder coated or something to protect from the salt water. Just something to know if you're near water. Always, keep that in mind. But anyway, that was done through TLS. So we quoted them, pushed it to Noble, right? Because it was through MRO. So Noble was the prime. Remember, it's ADS, Darley Defense, Noble, and Supply Corps. So Noble was the prime he was working with. Well, he developed the deal, brought it to Noble. Noble helped him kit it a little bit, but I think I helped him kit most of it. Just give it a part name and description, part number and description, So it flies through the scope, which roll up doors do fly through the scope. It's not like you're having to be crafty or anything. Um, anyway, Noble gave him net 60 terms. Okay. So that's net 60. Okay. That dude called me like throwing up in the middle of the night because it was like day 63. They still didn't pay him. Right. And then his subcontractor, he's like, bro, these people want their money, like straight up. He's like, I really don't know what to do. And I was like, you know what? That's pretty messed up. That's why I'm biased toward ADS and Darley Defense because they pay immediately. Because I guarantee you, Noble got paid, maybe a week after those doors were installed. But if they kind of sometimes, you know, what's it called? Borrow from Peter to pay Paul. I don't know, but like, they probably had other people on other installations that had bigger jobs that they're like, hey, I can close this if you could do a prepay. So they took Carl's money that they should have gave right to him a week after he completed all this, and they gave it to somebody else as a prepay to help them out to close a bigger deal. And then they made Carl wait all the way till net 60 and then went 3 days over and then paid him, right? So obviously those penalties day after day eats up your profit. Plus those subcontractors wanted their money and they're about to, I don't know, like kneecap them or something. But they were pretty serious because that's a long time to make somebody wait net 60, right? So what I told them to do, which I'd never experienced that before, so I didn't tell them this when I was coaching them through this whole process, is I'm like at the bottom of your quote. All right, if you're going to develop the business, you get the opportunity. Customer wants to push it through TLS. Okay, you can when they push your part number out and it comes out to bid, that's like a jump ball. Okay, they all have to come to you to get a quote, and whoever works with you the most, right, is gonna get the lowest price from you. Basically, you can pick who wins. So when you go quote the primes for them to add profit on it and turn it back into DLA, who then awards it to the customer, and then you come in and work, right? You put at the bottom of your quote net 15, and then you do a 2% penalty compounding every day it's late. You just have that in the fine print. If you have your little quote box, you have everything, part number description, everything listed out, total, taxes, total, and then hey, net 15 and 2% late fee compounding every day it's late. Because then you don't have to worry about a prime not paying you. Because if they have you listed as a C tier vendor, most contractors, most vendors, they don't know any of this stuff. So, they put them as like a C tier vendor and they give them net 60 terms, right? And the government does not take long to pay you. They do not take long to pay you at all. So, they probably had his money and they made him wait that whole time and were late, but he couldn't do anything about it, really, or it wouldn't even have been worth it to do anything about it, to go to court for, I don't know, maybe the 7 G's it cost him, but that's stressful. They ended up paying him and he paid his subs, but his profit was ate up on that job, and that was a pretty fat job. But if you put that late fee with penalties in the fine print, not like you have to have a whole ton of fine print. It just needs to be like a little sentence with a star next to it, small print underneath your quote box. Hey, net 15. All right. And if you need a prepay, like if you go to get a quote for roll up doors and they say, hey, I need a 30% prepay. So it's $380,000, whatever. So that's like, 100 G's prepay. Well, then you put that in the bottom of your quote too. You add profit to it, give the total, say it's 380, I'd add 20% to that. So that's like another 72, 450, just say 460 is your quote to deal to one of the primes. Well, then you say, hey, 30% is due as a prepay. You put that in the fine print, 30% due up front as a prepay, net 15 terms, 2% compounding interest every day is late. Boom. All right. It'll never get to that. As long as it's on your quote, it doesn't matter. They're always going to pay you. And if it's ADS or Darley, well, you just went and developed that job in that business that they didn't develop. So yeah, they're gonna push you that 30% up front. That way you don't need to get credit or anything. Like you don't, it still helps to get credit. I definitely recommend getting a line of credit. But if that prime wants to win that opportunity, well, then they're going to push you, a 30% prepay. And then you just take that, give it to the manufacturer, and then they'll start manufacturing everything. It's no money out of your pocket, right? And that's the price they pay for that win, because you can give that win to any of those primes. So you want to work with the ones who are going to help you out. And that's, in my experience, going to be ADS and Darley Defense because they're large and they have the money to do that, just sitting around. So as long as you close the deal and they get the lowest price, they don't mind giving you a 30% prepay, right? But just to protect yourself with the penalties and late fees, say, look, man, it's net 15. Sometimes they'll be like, look, we don't do net 15, yada yada. And I'm like, look, these are just my terms. Because if you go find the deal and you develop it, capture it, put your own custom part number on it, you dictate the terms, period. Most contractors don't know anything about any of this at all. So they're basically letting ADS go in, go to the customer, get the requirements, and then they're waiting for ADS to call them and say, "Hey, man, you're local. I need you to do this. I'm gonna send you the list. Go quote it. Put it into a kit, or call me, and we'll put it in a kit together, and then give it back to me, and then I'll get it to the customer." That's what they're used to doing. Okay, that's because it's like whatever. Hey, they ADS, they close deals. So as a subcontractor, you're like, hell yeah, man. I don't know what they're doing, but they just, they do make money. But I'm teaching you how to go do that. So you're in control of the deal, right? Because if they're in control of the deal, they're going to be like, hey, we don't do prepays and we do, net 30, net 60, whatever. So that means you need to eat it, you need to float it, the money that long. And then we're not doing any prepays because they just brought you the work. They just brought you the opportunity. So they're like, hey, go quote it and stuff. We'll close the deal. It's guaranteed, but you're doing the prepays and you're floating that financing for the net 60. Even though they're not going to wait till 60 days to pay you. Like, not those companies, they won't. But it's totally reverse. So you better believe they'll do that to you if you're just sitting there waiting for them to throw something over to the fence to you, because they're the ones getting in front of the customer, developing all the business, which you can do. Well, then that's, you kind of have to work on their terms or just go to somebody else, right? But if you're going to develop it and you're throwing your own part number on it and it's a jump ball, meaning, oh crap, this guy obviously knows how to kit. He got in front of the government somehow. So now they just want that win. So if you say a 30% prepaid net 15, a 2% late fee every day's late, they're gonna agree to those terms if they want the win. Um, so yeah, that's definitely a good thing. That's what I originally wrote down. I forget what I even said before that, honestly, but yeah, whatever. But yeah, that's good to know. And bam, just like that, it's 8:03. Hopefully, you guys got something out of that. Uh, I think that's a decent first cohort, I guess. This is the one I count this as cohort number one. The first one, I was about to take off for vacation like the next morning and at 2 a.m. I had to drive from New Mexico, kind of El Paso, Texas, all the way to Destin, Florida. So I don't know. It wasn't as organized. So I count this as our first quote cohort, but I plan on doing these bi-weekly until, like I said before, there's no more questions from you guys. And then everything's in the course. And then, I could always just say refer to module 7, video 3, because I answered that question already. But we got a long way to go for that. So until then, I'm gonna keep collecting all your questions, making videos, adding them to the course, and till we get a better product. But I don't think that was a bad first cohort. Hopefully, a lot of this stuff is just business and doing business with the government, period. It's not like it is literally just supplies, because you could be going to, focus on supplies and you get a service dropped in your lap. It's not like you're going to say no to it. But a lot of this is just, business and doing business, DOD specific or government specific. So it touches a lot more, than just supplies and products. It's just Eric wanted to call it supplies and products. And whatever, man. It's all good. But yeah, that's all I got for you tonight, guys. So if you didn't get any questions answered, or the more you learn, the more questions you have, just write them down and then come back, not next week, but the week after, and then we'll just get them all answered. And other than that, that's all I got for you guys. And I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for buying the course. And that's all I have. Have a great weekend, everybody. You all good?
Hey, appreciate it. Great meeting.
Yeah,
From
man.
what
Awesome.
internet was a little spotty, but from what I caught, it was great. Is there somewhere we can review this too? You said there's a recording
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, I recorded this time. That's another thing. The first cohort I didn't even record. So now I'm about to stop recording and it's going to be recorded. And then I'm going to take this recording and I'm going to upload it into, the product section. Yeah. And then we'll be good. You can reference it. But yeah.
Appreciate it,
Hey,
brother.
this is
Thank
a
you.
great cohort. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, man. Awesome. Thank you guys. I appreciate it, man. It's good seeing you guys. All right. We'll see you in a couple
That's right.
weeks.
Have a good night. Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Take it easy.
Thank you, Ryan.